So we will jump into doing a little bit of a Q&A. So if we can get Sofia and Tom back up, and we'll do this. And look, there are their beautiful faces. Yeah, thank you so much again. Amazing talks, and yeah, so much cool stuff going on in this room. So I guess, yeah, one of the things, maybe to kick it off, I think there's an interesting thing to talk with Sofia about, in that I'd say, like, in contrast to, say, Tom and Paul, like, they're in quite established industries. You know, there's email marketing is a category, and data visualization, dashboarding is quite an established category now. Whereas NomNom is almost like creating, it's like nothing really exists there yet, right? Like, so I was intrigued to hear how you're going about that. Are you like trying to define a whole new industry, or are you actually joining another one and you're selling it that way? I'd be intrigued to hear your thoughts on that.
There are people are doing different jobs when it comes to product management and user research in general. Within those teams, they are doing very specific jobs for a long time, and they are evolving those jobs as well to adapt to better ways of building products. So they use many tools to do this, and what we're essentially doing is making that process a lot easier to manage. So one of the challenges that our customers have is around understanding all these data points coming from different places, especially qualitative data. So it's not numeric necessarily, it's just text, stories coming from customers. So the way we go about is understanding those jobs, like how you do this today with these tools or with no tools, how you do this today, the other area, and how those workflows connect to each other. So we are trying to discover a better way to execute jobs that people are already doing, but indeed there is no necessarily a tool. There's many popping out anyway, that's good, but there's not necessarily a tool that is doing that job efficiently. So we're just trying to help them to get there. So we're not reinventing something that doesn't exist. We're just trying to understand better the pattern of how people are using multiple tools to achieve that.
Got it. Cool, awesome. I guess pick on you now, Tom. You guys are obviously totally bootstrapped, doing this all on your own, and I think you talked about a lot of the positives of doing that. You know, you have all this control. Have there been any like challenges, downsides? Like, it'd be cool to hear like what's been. You know, you read TechCrunch every day. This company's got 10 mil, 20 mil, 50 mil. Does that like worry you? And yeah, what are the challenges of not going the investment route?
Yeah, I mean, the obvious thing is, as a bootstrap business that's profitable, you know, we could be turning over $1 million a year, but we won't get as much press as someone that gets £1 million worth of investment. And that's kind of, it seems slightly weird, but that's the way things work. So press is one of the things that's harder. And you know, there are times where I'm sure every company wishes they have more developers, and we wish we could hire more people and spend more on marketing. But I think we're very happy with the way we're going. We've had offers, they've never materialized into anything, and we've never really taken them that seriously. And our approach has always been to grow sustainably, and we're quite happy in doing so.
Good on you. Cool. And then Paul, I was going to ask you about. Obviously, we've heard a lot about the pricing. Often a lot of companies start their pricing out like, oh, what are the other people in our space doing? Copy paste, let's do that. How do you think about competition in relation to what you're doing at Geckoboard? Like, the space has obviously got a lot more people in it now. Do you worry about the competition, or is it just like focus on us, focus on our customers, and they can do whatever they want?
No, don't focus on the competition. Definitely not. But we do know that we sit somewhere on a spectrum for when customers come to evaluate us, and there are definitely those who are like really pulling on the value levers. Right, you get a lot for very little. We have tried that. I mean, you saw that a couple of our pricing generations were just like very poor at returning much value for us. And I also think that actually they're welcome to the customers that they can garner in that way. We have you know, it won't surprise you to learn, but we've looked at the numbers and we know that those customers that are paying us the most stick with us longer, on board better, and generally have less of a support burden than those customers paying us less. I would kind of say that I still don't feel like, I still feel like it's quite a fragmented space, and I still there's a huge amount of market making to be done yet in what we're doing, and we've got one eye on the future. I think when we launched the alpha version in July of 2010 and paid products first of all in 2011, it was fairly fresh. There wasn't people doing what we're doing, and since then some have come, some have gone. A couple of acquisitions and shutterings and whatnot. I think if we were to kind of look at look at competitors, we'd be pulled in entirely the wrong direction. It is up to us to make sure that what we're creating has sufficient value for customers that they want to pay us and that they'll gladly and happily pay us. And you don't get that by aping other products. You get that by really critically trying to understand the problems that they're trying to solve and then seeing where there's a juncture with what you can provide. So no, I don't really spend much time looking at competitors. In fact, our biggest competitor, I have we bump into each other at conferences and we chat like a couple of friendly people, but we hardly ever talk shop. And I really have no idea what their pricing is right now. And
contact us.
Yeah, maybe. But I haven't even visited their pricing page. I mean, I don't spend any time doing that. I think that's it's way down on my list of priorities.
Cool, awesome. I feel like I don't want to hog this because I'm sure lots of people have lots of questions. So I'm going to open it up to the floor, and please do ask away. Who have we got? Oh, we got, what a surprise. Always the first one to ask a question. Go for it, Ben.
Firstly, I love Geckoboard. Geckoboard's awesome.
Thank you.
So good work at that. So you obviously eventually got to the pricing point where you said, this sort of is probably what we're going to stick with for a while. It seems to work okay. Do you think if you could go back to the shoes of the first bit where you're pacing around your office trying to figure out what you did, if you knew what you would now, would you have made that decision, or do you think you needed the journey of?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, and I think I find myself asking that question more and more, not just about pricing, but about product strategy, customers that we're attracting, marketing strategy, all of that kind of stuff. It would be wonderful to be able to go back in time and say, look, this is all of the information you need to know. However, I'm sometimes not the easiest person to say things to, and I'm not sure how I would convince myself otherwise. Now, I was in a place of dire straits and kind of what do I do and all that kind of thing. But for me, I think the journey is important. I do. I genuinely feel like properly cathecting and internalizing the lessons that you learn is the only way to make better decisions. And the other thing that sounds very much like a silver bullet. Like it sounds like I'll do this and it'll be okay. And I'm deeply distrustful of that as a way of approaching problems, because if it seems too good to be true, it will be too good to be true. There's no shortcuts and there's no easy hacks, or at least I haven't stumbled across any that have worked in any material sense for us. Also, the product has evolved a lot. Product evolved from listening to customers and things like that. We simply wouldn't have been able to implement the pricing that we have, that I'm happy with, back then, just because number of integrations has changed, the whole user experience has changed, the multi-user accounts has changed, all of this kind of stuff, and we would have had to do a huge amount of work, which we did do over years, in order to be able to get the product into a state for us to be able to charge like that. So I don't think that would have. I would have said thanks, but I'm not. I think I probably would have. I do value the journey. Yeah.
Yeah, go for it at the back.
So Geckoboard is one of those products that I've always looked up to.
Thank you.
One question I have related to your freemium. Like, what has been some of the biggest learnings related to the free to paid conversions when you have freemium? What were the key takeaways before you switched from not having any freemium to saying remove freemium and then have only paid plans?
Yeah.
What data points convinced you to actually move?
Yep.
Oh, I realised I should be repeating the question.
So
for the video,
repeating the question. Okay. So
yeah.
the question was when we tried our experiment where we offered a free tier in the product, what were the things to convince us to jettison that and go back to paid plans? Right. The main thing was the number of customers that we had to support and the type of customers they were. So again, I think you attract a certain type of customer when you have free. I think, Tom, you can speak to that. You get a different caliber of customer, right?
Yes, sure.
And then the second thing was and then supporting them is expensive because they're the ones. They're the ones asking all the questions, asking for, you need to change this, you should have this, whatever else. It's a free product. It's a free product. You tell me how this is going to happen. And then not enough of them were converting to paying customers for us to be able to justify the expense of doing that. So I think that was the 2 or 3 things that kind of, and it didn't take long, by the way, for us to find that out. This was an experiment that ran from May of 2011 till August of 2011. So it was enough data to be statistically significant and enough data for us to get a really good, tangible feel for that. Yeah. Although, what was your experience? I mean, what flipped the switch for you to say we're not having any free tiers?
So we still do have a free tier,
okay.
Actually, and the thing with spammers will try and get the most they can get for their money. So they will want to try and get 100,000 subscribers for as little money as possible, rather than our free tier is slightly above MailChimp's. It's at 2,500 users you can get for free, and we treat that very much as a sunken marketing cost. There's a virality, I guess, that perhaps you don't have being up in offices and on people's mobile phones that you can benefit with email marketing. But we certainly would never extend our free plan so it becomes attractive to spammers who want to send as many emails as they can at nothing. So yeah, that's what we've done.
And just as a follow-on question, do you see a reasonable conversion rate from that? I mean, is that the most kind of is that the channel that brings you the most customers? Or?
So the channel that brings us the most customers is not referrals through free emails, but it is a good free channel. I mean, we've sent 1.5 billion emails, and being able to stick our logo at the bottom on many of those is, you'd pay God knows how much for having eyeballs on 1.5 billion things. So we, as I said, we treat it as a sunken marketing cost. There isn't much many people upgrading from free to the tier above, which is 10,000 users, I believe. But again, as I said, we treat it as a sunken marketing cost. And sadly, as you say, the free users are usually the more painful ones because they're not so technical, or they're just trying to save a buck. But as I said, as long as you can write that off as a cost per acquiring a user, I don't think that's a massive problem.
I was actually going to follow up on the pricing thing for you, Tom, because you guys are essentially, well, my understanding is your whole pitch is we're cheaper.
Yeah, and that's the first thing everyone says. Don't go and pitch your pricing cheaper, and we're doing it, and God knows why. But the thing I will say is we have increased our prices now, I think 3 or 4 times, and we've more than doubled our average revenue per user. And in doing so, we have acquired a better standard of user, and in doing so, we've reduced our support workload and we're making more money. We are hoping, I think, to move further upstream and get better quality customers. But I also think there is a room in the marketplace. I mean, I was at Secret Escapes, and I hope this isn't recorded, but we were spending about on email marketing costs. And obviously they're getting a lot of value from that, but whoever's raking that in, Salesforce, are doing very well.
And I think free tier. They're not on the free tier of email.
No, God no. We couldn't handle their volume yet. But I think there is room for us to just kind of tear things up a little bit and charge a little bit less than people and still acquire a good standard user. But it's striking that balance. You can't price too cheap. You don't want to attract, as I said, nefarious users or really painful users, nor do you want to be the same price as MailChimp, because then everyone expects everything that MailChimp comes with, which is, beautiful interface, beautiful everything, and
They're not
it's
that
just
great.
fantastic.
They're not that great.
Is it not? Okay. We look up to them, and unlike you, we do pay a lot of attention to our customers because we are in such an established industry. I know I switched us to Geckoboard at Secret Escapes, or implemented that, and there wasn't really anyone else in that market. There was 2 or 3, but Geckoboard were by far the most established. With email marketing software, there's, I would say, hundreds of email marketing platforms, and you have to compete on something. We can't compete on features right now because we don't have the 50 developers that everyone else has, and price is one of the things we can compete on, and we can really focus on price and delivering what 90% of users want. And as long as we get that sweet spot right, and as I said, we've probably doubled our prices since I've been here. So the last year or 2, we've doubled our prices, and we are getting a better standard of users. So every SaaS business makes the mistake of pricing themselves too cheap. You did the same, we did the same. We're probably still too cheap now, God knows. The only way you can find out is by charging more.
I was going to say, Sofia, what about you guys on pricing? Like, while we're on that subject, how's it been for NomNom?
Yeah, so in the process of coming out of private beta, one of the things that I learned was that lesson of giving away products. And even though they're giving you a lot of feedback and you're learning, that is relative, because you just don't really learn what you need to learn when people are not paying for your product. So as soon as we switched that, we had a lot of positive pressure for investors to actually charge more. And then I don't understand so much why you won't do it, because you want to get it there, you want to get traction, you want to get people paying. But I decided that, well, first of all, financially, you cannot afford to have a product that is injecting the type of data that we inject and support that for people for free. So it's just not possible in terms of business model. And the second thing is that we decided to really go ahead and try a price that we felt was a good starting point. So for beta users, it was like a special deal, so that actually doesn't count because we didn't have a lot of conversions for that. But then when we started getting sign-ups and we opened doors, we started charging $500 a month, and that was the beginning of the race. Now that has a lot of challenges, of course. The cycle is longer. It takes a lot of, it's a team tool as well, so it takes a lot of decision making. So you make more money, but you kill yourself by time because you're spending all this time trying to close them, and the velocity is not there. And it's not a price point either that allows you to have that cycle, because you want to charge way more to then support that length, right, of conversion. So we've been thinking a lot about how to go actually up and more, and try to figure it out more enterprise sort of focus on this, because the people that are interested in what we do and the customers that we get today tend to be larger companies. We just haven't figured out necessarily what that pricing structure looks like for them, but this is the beginning and the start. And we do have a $200 plan that we created because of all these things that we hear about, and okay, well, we need to just try and open the door and get this and that, and we actually don't get conversions from that plan. So we want to not have it anymore. So it's a crazy ride. Pricing is so crazy, and there's so much thought that goes into it, and you just have to experiment with it and whatever works for you. But you were saying about building a new category and starting, that's an advantage as well, because the comparison is not there yet. So you can dictate a little bit about how you go about pricing. That's not going to last forever, but I want to make sure that if other people start building, which they are, we don't run ourselves to the ground too fast.
Awesome. Any other? Oh, cracky! Loads of questions. We'll go for Hugh.
Sorry, another pricing question, quick one. Do you grandfather users on pricing, or do you force them onto the new pricing tiers?
Every single time, grandfather them all the time. What we do sometimes, though, is if we introduce a bunch of new features on the new generation of pricing, we say to customers, look, you can stay in your old pricing, but you stay with the feature set that you paid for. However, we believe that this is like a much better deal. You're getting much better product out of this. You've got all of these extra features. So if you want to come across, we'll kind of maybe give you some incentive to do that in the first couple of months, and then otherwise you just have to pay for the new generation pricing if you want to unlock new features. However, I strongly believe that if you commit to somebody that this is what they're going to be, signing up to pay for, and also then that's what you should do. But also, if you believe that the grandfathered customers are a small fraction of what you believe will be your entire user base, then it's not worth kind of the goodwill aspect, like losing the goodwill. If you believe that set of customers is a meaningful fraction of your eventual customer base, then that's probably a different question. But we're looking, we want hundreds of thousands of customers, not just like thousands or tens of thousands. So we've always grandfathered.
Cool. I know we're a bit short on time. Do you guys have anything to add on that?
We did the same. I don't know if it's thinking right businessly, but we feel like we owe our early users who really shaped the product and put a lot of faith in us when we were just doing this evenings and weekends in bedrooms, etc. We feel like the least you can do is honour the commitment you made early on, which is charging them. Perhaps it's half the price or a third of the price, but at the end of the day, it's still money in the pocket.
Cool.
Yeah,
cool.
We haven't had enough iterations. So from the beta program, you pay something like $99, and then that was it, and then they're still in the same product and so on. But we haven't had enough iterations to say, yeah, we had grandfather everybody else.
Cool. Those hands up. So we've got 3 more questions. We'll go, Dwayne. Yeah.
Sofia, you talked a lot about remote teams. Do you think your current plan is scalable? Can you increase it? What is the biggest problem you're facing right now? It can't be all perfect.
No, it's not perfect, of course not. A lot of uncomfortable situations and a lot of uncomfortable sort of conversations as well. It has a lot of challenges around communication. That's why we do so many things to try to understand it. There's companies that have done this at scale very well, Automatic, Envision, for example, and they have done different ways, they have implemented different structures. What we have today is what we have today. I'm not sure if that is going to scale, but we are figuring out how we adapt. We started remote from the very beginning, and we plan to carry on like that. I think that's an advice that I got, like Buffer always writing about these things, but I remember, I think they said that it's a decision you have to make. You cannot be half pregnant on that. You have to go like totally remote or not, because it's very difficult then to scale the team. So far, the view is that we will carry on doing it. The biggest challenge is always communication. Like how you get everybody on the ssame page, how can everybody collaborate better, how we can just really align the efforts on the right things. But I think you can have the same challenges when you have people in the same office anyway.
Yep.
So yeah, so I don't know, that's my view.
What would be your best tool that you use right now for that?
The ones that I mentioned really help, but it's not one tool. I think it's just a combination of things that keep the alignment and keeps the communication going. Like Slack is just when we have the conversations, but I think for me specifically, I think Status Hero and Ritrion, because you can actually have those deeper conversations there or manage sort of the continuous progress, are very useful, and they're super cheap. Like, yeah, $20 a month, and you get actually visibility into what the teams are actually doing. But there's many, like there's a combination. There's never one tool that is going to fix a massive problem like communication.
Cool. Thank you. Go for it. You had your hand up before.
You had 12 startups before, is that right?
Well, 12 ideas that I worked on, yeah.
So how did you, when you stumbled across or made Geckoboard, how did you know that was the right path? Because obviously 12 must sort of hit you hard. I don't know, having 12 ideas and then getting keep going? How did you keep going? Like,
So the question was, I 12 previous ideas before Geckoboard. How did I keep going, and how did I know that Geckoboard was had any legs? Well, it was very easy to keep going because I was working at the time as a contractor designing and building data warehouses in investment banks, and I knew I didn't want to do that until I was 65. So anything was going to be better than that, right? So save up a bunch of money. I don't have a lavish lifestyle. Put that into savings, and then try something for 3 or 6 months, like really dedicate everything to it and try and do something. So in terms of motivation to keep going, the motivation was not to be working in an investment bank. How did I know that? Well, Geckoboard was a little bit different actually to a lot of them. I had the idea while I was in a job. I hadn't kind of saved up the money and parked it, and I parked the money and then decided to work on it. I had the idea, and I was just like, I was burning, ready to go. This is something I have to do now, I can't wait. And it got to this situation. So March 2010, I had the idea. By July of the same year, we had like a version of the product that was available to be seen by some people, like a very early alpha. By August, so the following month, I was getting up at 6 o'clock. I lived down in Kent. Getting up at 6 o'clock, coming up to the city to work, leaving. And I don't know if any of you have worked in an investment bank, but try leaving at 5 o'clock and not feel those eyes burning into the back of your head. Leave at 5 o'clock, go home. I've got a wife and 2 kids, spend some time with them, then onto Geckoboard. And I would like work on that until 2, 3, sometimes 4 o'clock in the morning, get 2 hours sleep, go back in. And when this started happening, like day after day after day after day, I sat down with my wife and we said, right, there's 2 things that come out of this. Like 2 things that happen. This is unsustainable as we are. Either we jettison the project and go back to working in the bank and whatever else, or we go all in. And so I handed in my notice, and a month later I was working on Geckoboard full time. But it was because I could see some signs of real traction. Like there is like it's a very real feeling. It was completely unlike anything else I'd done before.
okay,
Yeah.
Cool. And last but not, we got one more. Ed, if it's a quick question, and then Aiden.
So for Sofia, you mentioned that you did a private beta for 8 months?
Mm-hmm.
What was so I hear a lot, ship early and ship often.
Mm-hmm.
What's the thinking behind doing private beta for 8 months rather than shipping publicly straight away and getting feedback like that straight away?
Initially was some of the complexity and the technical challenges around the product, the type of data sources that we wanted to integrate. So we're trying to figure out what does it look like to put in front of people very different type of data, like customer support ticket, a survey, a review, emails and so on. So trying to understand that reading experience, it took a while. Then also some pricing event is that I thought when I was building this that a lot of people like me was going to be using NomNom, like people are working in growth teams or marketing and so on. And when we launched our lovely landing page, 90% or 99% of the sign up were product teams, product designers, product managers. So I had to really consider the problem from a different perspective. The problem was the same, but really understanding workflows and then what that meant. So we took the time to talk to people, to go through the program and so on. And a little thing that I think is important to share is that we went through the Techstars program here in London, the accelerator, and that also created a lot of this disruption because those programs are super helpful, but it also can confuse the hell out of you because you have to grow out of nowhere. And that also influenced a lot of the cycle and the product development and the learning. So we had to just step back again and go and understand, like, is this real sort of growth or not? And if it's not, what we do to fix it. So that was part of standing that period. And of course, the normal fear of a founder, like, oh my God, I don't want to launch it yet, it's not ready. That's it. It's a combination of all those stuff. But again, if I go back, I will definitely launch that a lot faster. Mostly because of the type of feedback that you receive, that's it. And the feeling of validation, right? You have people paying you money for this thing, so, let's keep working on it.
Cool, thank you. I believe we have last but not least.
Yeah, just following up from Paul, what were those early signs of traction that Geckoboard had but the other companies didn't?
Okay, so question was, what were the early signs of traction that convinced me to we found a couple of channels for getting at least people to try the product and to give us some feedback early. So I remember we put it up on Hacker News, but for like, here's a little code you can use to skip the waiting line and kind of jump in. So yeah, and we had like 850 signups in that day. And then out of that kind of spread like word of mouth and kind of, people kind of, but like the heuristic that I used was the number of support requests I was answering. So people, we had a beta list and that was growing, but I very much felt that was, like, initially after we launched the first wave of beta invites, the first couple of waves, we saw that was a huge proportion of them were tire kickers, right? People are just coming along and like, just saying, oh, this looks interesting, let's try it out, but no real use case. But when people are writing support tickets to you and they're asking for this and they say, look, I think this is really great, but when I need this and whatever else, like that feels real, feels tangible. It feels like people are honestly expressing their needs. And when I was doing like 3 or 4 hours of that every day, that was enough of a signal for me to at least commit more of my time to it at that point in time.
Awesome. Thank you. Right, I think it's time we give a big round of applause to our speakers. It's been awesome. Thank you. If anyone has any feedback on the event, if it's nice, tweet us. If it's not, email us. And we would love to hear some stories about what you'd like in future events, so please tell us. Thanks, everyone, for coming along. Cheers. Thank you.